Ever get that feeling like you're looking for more than just a paycheck? Like, maybe a way to earn some income, but also do something you actually feel good about.
Yeah,
Something that like works with your life and not, the other way around.
totally. That's a feeling a lot of people can relate to, for sure.
Well, if that sounds familiar, you're definitely in the right place.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
Today, we're going to dive deep into the world of website accessibility, and I gotta say, there's way more to it than you might think.
Oh, absolutely. And that includes a really cool opportunity for you too, by the way.
Okay, so let's start there. What are we talking about today, and what should our listeners be ready for?
Well, we're going to unpack a pretty big challenge that a lot of small businesses are dealing with right now. How to make sure their websites are accessible to everybody, including people with disabilities.
Got it. Accessibility. I feel like we all kind of get that, right? Like in the real world,
Right, exactly.
wider doorways, ramps, that sort of thing. But you're saying the same idea applies to websites now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about being inclusive, which is obviously super important. It's actually becoming a much bigger legal issue, too. We're talking about things like the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and Section 508. Those are the legal frameworks that are basically extending into the digital world now.
So it's not just about doing the right thing. There are real legal consequences for businesses if their websites aren't accessible.
Exactly. And this is where our conversation gets really interesting because we're going to see how you can actually help businesses with this and at the same time build that flexible income you might be looking for.
I am all ears. Tell me more about this opportunity.
For sure. We're going to be focusing on something called the 508 Help Desk Agent Program. Have you heard of it?
I have not, actually. Fill me in.
So their whole mission is to make the internet a more accessible place and make sure it's legally compliant, for everyone. They mostly work with small businesses, helping them understand and meet all these requirements for digital accessibility, which can be pretty complicated.
I bet. And you're saying this program can help people earn income, too?
Yep. And we'll talk about that more in a bit, but it's a pretty cool model, and I think it could be a great fit for people like, our listeners who are looking for something more than just a job.
Okay, so let's talk more about this accessibility problem you mentioned. Are businesses really facing, real consequences for not having accessible websites? Or is this mostly hypothetical at this point?
Oh, it's definitely real, and it's actually a really fast-growing legal concern. Just to give you an idea, according to WFLA News Channel 8, back in 2018, there were over 2,200 ADA website lawsuits filed in federal court.
Wow, that's a ton. Over 2,200.
Yeah, over 2,200. And get this, that's a 181% increase from the year before.
Seriously, a 181% increase in just 1 year. That's a massive jump.
It is. And what's really interesting about that is it shows how things are shifting. It used to be that these lawsuits were mainly targeting big companies, but now they're going after smaller businesses too. Businesses that might not even realize they're at risk.
Yeah, that makes sense. Smaller businesses might not have the same resources as big corporations to keep up with all these legal changes. So this WFLA report, did it have any examples of real businesses that have been affected by this?
Yeah, actually they did. There was this story about Island Comfort Footwear. It's a small shoe store in Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
They had this really basic website that only cost them $65 a month.
$65.
Yeah, $65 a month. And they got sued by a blind woman from South Florida because she couldn't use her screen reader software to buy shoes from their site.
Oh, wow. So just because the website wasn't compatible with her screen reader, she couldn't buy anything, and then they got hit with a lawsuit.
Exactly. And the owners of the store, they said that nobody ever told them anything about ADA compliance when they first set up their website.
Right. It's like this hidden cost, right? You think you're doing everything right by having a website, and then bam,
Right.
a lawsuit. I can imagine that's a real shock for a lot of small business owners.
Definitely. And it makes you think about what it's actually like for someone who uses assistive technology to browse the web.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to forget that not everyone experiences the internet in the same way.
Exactly. And actually, the news report talked to a woman named Louise who uses a screen reader.
Okay.
And she described how frustrating it is to try and navigate a website that's not accessible. You get so close to doing what you want to do, and then you just hit this wall because the site doesn't have the right code to work with your screen reader.
Oh, I see. So it's not just a matter of the website looking different. It's actually about the underlying code that makes the website work.
Exactly. And a lot of times it comes down to really simple things like missing alt text on images. So for someone who can't see the image, the screen reader can't tell them what it is.
Right.
Or sometimes the headings on the page are all messed up, so it's impossible to navigate the page logically using a screen reader.
Gotcha. So I can see how that would be incredibly frustrating. It's like being locked out right at the finish line, like you said.
Exactly.
It really makes you think about all the things that we take for granted when we browse the web. Okay, so we've talked about the experience of someone using assistive technology, but what about the legal perspective on all of this? The report mentioned that some lawyers call these lawsuits a shakedown. What's the truth there? Is it really just about lawyers trying to make a quick buck?
Well, I think it's a bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
It's true that some lawyers might see this as a way to make some easy money. But, the general advice that businesses are getting is that fighting these lawsuits can actually end up costing them way more than just settling.
So even if a business owner thinks the lawsuit is unfair, it might be cheaper to just pay up.
Sometimes, yeah. And the reason is the main issue almost always comes back to the fact that the website isn't accessible. Legally speaking, there's not much of a defense for ignoring ADA requirements, especially when it comes to your website.
I see. So even if a business owner feels like they're being unfairly targeted, the bottom line is they probably still need to fix their website to be accessible.
Exactly. And the WFLA report talked about this woman, Emily Fuller, who sued that shoe store we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Apparently, she's filed lawsuits against something like 175 businesses in just 2 years. She started out going after big companies, but now she's focused on smaller ones.
Wow. 175 businesses.
Yeah. And that just goes to show that businesses of all sizes need to be paying attention to this.
For sure. And we talked about the financial impact of these lawsuits earlier, right? It's not just a slap on the wrist. These lawsuits can actually really hurt a small business.
Absolutely. These lawsuits can end up costing small businesses tens of thousands of dollars in settlements and legal fees. And for a small business that's already struggling, that can be devastating.
Definitely. Okay. So we've made it very clear that there's a real legal risk here for businesses that don't have accessible websites.
Mm.
But looking beyond the legal stuff, why else should businesses care about this? Are there any other reasons why website accessibility is important?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, the whole point of the ADA is to prevent discrimination against people with disabilities. And that applies to online businesses just as much as brick-and-mortar stores.
Right. Makes sense.
But there are actually a lot of benefits to website accessibility that go beyond just avoiding lawsuits.
No.
For example, when a business makes their website accessible, they're opening themselves up to a much larger audience. There are millions of people with disabilities who might not be able to use their website if it's not accessible.
Oh, that's a good point. It's not just about avoiding legal trouble. It's about expanding your customer base.
Exactly. Plus, when you make your website accessible, it shows your customers that you care about inclusivity.
Yeah.
And that builds trust. It's really a win-win situation.
So it sounds like it's a much better strategy to be proactive about accessibility rather than just reacting when you get hit with a lawsuit.
Exactly. It's about taking a positive approach.
Yeah.
Making your business welcoming to everyone.
Okay, so I think we've laid out the why of website accessibility pretty clearly. But let's talk more about the how. How does 508 Help Desk actually help businesses with all of this? And what does the opportunity look like for someone who might be interested in getting involved?
Great questions. So 508 Help Desk is a division of PCB Media Group. They focus specifically on helping small businesses make their websites accessible.
Okay.
They offer a bunch of different services, everything from a free website accessibility report to full audits. And they can even fix the problems for businesses and monitor their websites to make sure they stay accessible.
And are there specific types of businesses that they work with?
They work with a pretty wide range of businesses, actually.
Okay.
Any business that wants to be accessible and avoid legal problems.
Mm.
So that includes small businesses from all kinds of different industries, government contractors who often have their own set of accessibility rules they have to follow under Section 508, and then organizations in healthcare, law, and education. Really, just about anyone.
That's a pretty broad range.
Yeah.
So what about this independent agent opportunity you mentioned earlier? How does that work?
So this is where it gets really relevant for our listeners who are looking for a flexible way to earn income.
Okay, I'm all ears.
508 Help Desk is looking for people to join them as independent agents.
Okay.
And one of the best things about this is that it's super flexible. You can work remotely and set your own hours. And you don't even need any tech skills to get started.
No tech skills required. That's pretty awesome.
Right. I think that'll be a big relief for a lot of people who might be hesitant to try something like this. They provide all the training you need.
Okay, so no tech skills needed, flexible hours. What about the earning potential? How much can someone realistically make doing this?
So they say that agents can earn like $2,000 or more per month, even working part-time.
Wow. That's pretty impressive for part-time work. So how do agents actually make money?
The main way is by offering businesses that free website accessibility report that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Then, if the business decides to hire 508 help desk to fix the problems on their website, the agent earns a commission on the setup fees and also on the monthly fees for ongoing monitoring.
Gotcha. So it's commission-based, but there's also recurring revenue from the monthly monitoring.
Exactly. And there's even more potential to earn if you build a team of agents. You get override commissions on their sales, too.
So there's a clear path for growth within the program as well.
Yep.
Can you break down the commission structure a bit more? Like, what are the actual percentages and how do you move up the ranks?
Sure. So basically, 508 Help Desk keeps a third of the revenue, and another two-thirds goes to the agents.
Okay.
When you start out as a representative, you get 40% of that two-thirds share.
Got it.
And as you move up, that percentage goes up too. Like, if you become an agency owner, you can earn up to 90%.
90%, that's huge. So what does it take to become an agency owner?
It's based on your monthly revenue, so basically how much your team is selling each month. You start as a representative with no minimum, and then as you hit different revenue targets, you level up.
Got it.
So like when your team hits $2,500 in monthly revenue, you become a team leader.
Yeah.
Then at $7,500, you're a district leader and so on, all the way up to agency owner at $30,000 a month.
So it's not just about your own sales, it's about building a team and helping them succeed as well.
Exactly. It's a really cool system that rewards both individual effort and leadership. I think a lot of people are going to find that really appealing.
I think so too. So let's say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, hey, this sounds like something I could do. What are the first steps they should take to become an agent?
Well, the very first step is to go through their training program.
Okay. What kind of training is it?
It covers everything you need to know about website accessibility.
Okay.
You'll learn about Section 508, the WCAG, which are the guidelines for web accessibility. And they'll also give you all kinds of sales tools and resources, like sales scripts, answers to common questions, case studies, all that good stuff.
Sounds pretty comprehensive. What happens after the training?
Once you've finished the training, you get access to their whole suite of business tools.
Okay.
They have a CRM to keep track of your leads, marketing materials like flyers and presentations, a form to request those free website accessibility reports, and even templates for proposals and agreements. Basically everything you need to run your business.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So after the training and getting access to the tools, what's next?
Well, then it's time to start reaching out to businesses and offering them that free accessibility report.
Got it. It's all about outreach at that point. So 508 Help Desk provides all the training and tools, but what are the expectations for agents once they're up and running?
They do have some guidelines to make sure that agents are really taking advantage of the opportunity and representing the company well.
Makes sense.
So they want agents to be making at least 20 outreach attempts each day.
20 a day.
Yep. And they want you to keep track of everything in the CRM, follow up with businesses within 24 hours of sending them their report, participate in weekly sales and training calls, and of course represent 508 Help Desk professionally and ethically.
So it's not just a free-for-all. There's structure and accountability, but it sounds manageable.
Definitely. If you're motivated and willing to put in the work, it's totally achievable.
Okay, so what about advice for new agents? Are there any tips or best practices that they should keep in mind?
Yeah, for sure. 508 Help Desk really stresses the importance of educating businesses about accessibility rather than just focusing on the legal risks.
Okay.
They also recommend personalizing your pitch to each business, using real-world examples to show how accessibility issues can impact people, and framing accessibility as both a way to protect the business and an opportunity to reach more customers.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about scaring businesses into compliance, it's about showing them the value of accessibility.
Exactly. And if agents ever have any questions or need help, they can always reach out to 508 Help Desk for support. They have a dedicated email address just for agents. support@508helpdesk.com.
It's good to know there's support available. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the actual work of making websites accessible. What does that process look like for a business that decides to work with 508 Help Desk?
Well, like we said, it all starts with that free website accessibility report.
Right.
And according to 508 Help Desk, the process is designed to be super easy for businesses.
Okay. How so?
First, the business just gives 508 Help Desk some basic info about their website, their business, and their goals for accessibility.
Okay.
Then 508 Help Desk does a full audit of their website. And they usually get this done pretty quickly, like within 24 hours.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah. And then they give the business a detailed report that shows all the accessibility problems and what needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
And all of this happens before the business has to pay anything.
So they basically get a free diagnosis before they commit to any treatment.
Exactly. And here's the really cool part. 508 Help Desk can actually show businesses a preview of a new, accessible website before they even sign up.
Really? So businesses can see exactly what their website would look like if it were accessible.
Yep. That way they know exactly what they're getting before they make any decisions.
That's a really smart approach. It takes away a lot of the risk for businesses. So what happens if a business decides they want to go ahead and fix their website? What does 508 Help Desk actually do?
Well, 508 Help Desk offers a bunch of different services to fix accessibility issues.
Okay.
They can do things like fix the code on the website, add accessibility statements and badges to show that the site is compliant, and make other changes to make sure everyone can use the site.
And this is all included in their services.
Yes. And they also offer ongoing monitoring and support to make sure that the website stays accessible even as the rules and guidelines change.
So businesses don't just get a one-time fix, they get ongoing help to stay compliant. That makes a lot of sense.
It does. It's about building a long-term relationship with these businesses and making sure they're always covered.
Earlier, we talked about how 508 Help Desk specializes in affordable accessibility solutions.
Right.
Is that a big part of what sets them apart?
Definitely. They know that small businesses often don't have a ton of money to spend, so they try to keep their prices reasonable.
Okay. So they understand the challenges that small businesses face.
Exactly. And, the WFLA report that we talked about earlier, it actually pointed out that a lot of web developers don't even know about ADA accessibility standards. So they might be building websites for businesses that aren't accessible, and the business owners don't even know it.
Wow. So even if a business hires a web developer, they could still end up with a website that's not accessible. That's pretty scary.
It is. And what's even worse is that a lot of times the responsibility for website accessibility falls on the business owner, not the web developer.
Oh, that's a really important point.
It is. Business owners need to be proactive and ask their web developers the right questions.
What kind of questions should they be asking?
Well, for starters, they should definitely ask if the developer builds websites to be compliant with the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Okay.
Those are like the official rules for web accessibility.
Right. And what else?
They should also ask if the developer tests their websites for accessibility, as a part of their process, and if they offer any ongoing support to keep the website accessible.
So if the developer can't answer those questions clearly, that's a red flag.
Definitely. It might be a sign that they need to find a different developer.
Good advice. Now, let's say a business does find out that their website isn't accessible. What's involved in fixing it?
It really depends on the website.
Okay.
For simple websites, the fixes might be pretty easy.
Okay.
But for more complex sites, it can be a lot more involved. They might need to do a full audit to find all the problems and then make a bunch of changes to the code and the content.
So while 508 Help Desk tries to keep things affordable, there could still be some costs involved for businesses.
Yeah, definitely. But in the long run, it's much cheaper to fix the website than to get sued.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
The biggest takeaway here is that website accessibility isn't just a nice thing to do anymore. It's a legal requirement, and it's just smart business. If you ignore it, you could be putting your business at risk.
Right. And what about for our listeners who are interested in finding a fulfilling way to earn an income?
Well, the 508 Help Desk Agent Program is a really amazing opportunity to do just that. As an agent, you can help businesses protect themselves legally and make their websites more inclusive.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not just about making money, it's about making a difference.
Exactly. And you can do it all while working on your own terms and building a solid income. It does take work, but the rewards are definitely there.
So if anyone listening is intrigued and wants to learn more about becoming a 508 Help Desk agent, what should they do?
The best way is to visit their website, 508helpdesk.com. They have all the info there, and you can also reach out to them directly at join@508helpdesk.com. They're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. I think this has been a really eye-opening conversation.
You too.
It's definitely made me think differently about the web and who has access to it.
It's true. We often forget that the internet isn't accessible to everyone.
Yeah, it's easy to take it for granted.
Right. So for all of our listeners out there, think about all the businesses you interact with online every day. How many of them do you think are truly accessible?
That's a good question. I bet most people don't even think about it.
And how many of those businesses are potentially putting themselves at risk without even knowing it?
Hmm.
You could be the one to help them. You could help make the internet a more inclusive place for everyone. And you could build a successful business for yourself in the process.
Food for thought.
It is. It's all about making a difference, one website at a time.
I like that.
Me too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all of this valuable information. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found this deep dive informative and inspiring. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.